Masuma Katauka and you are watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. Trump administration has frozen $26 billion in funding across democratic states amid the government shutdown that has left 750,000 federal workers without pay. The U.S. Energy Department has also canceled $7.6 billion in climate projects, escalating partisan tensions as the Senate again failed to pass a stopgap measure. Israeli forces have stopped 13 boats from the Global Sumud Flotilla, while 30 other boats continue towards Gaza. The interception by Israel has sparked global outrage as Turkey condemned it as an act of terror, while Colombian president responded by expelling Israel's diplomatic delegations and terminating a free trade deal with Israel. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has accused Russia of using over 20 drones to strike near Chernobyl and of failing to fix crucial power lines to the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant, while the Kremlin claimed it is working to restore them. The United States will provide Ukraine with intelligence on long-range energy infrastructure targets inside of Russia, and is urging NATO allies to do the same. The move marks President Donald Trump's first major policy shift in support of Kyiv, as Washington also considers sending long-range Tomahawk missiles. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will meet around 50 European heads of state and EU leaders at the European Political Community Summit in Copenhagen today. President Zelensky will also hold a joint press conference with Denmark's Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen during his visit. G7 finance ministers have vowed to target countries and companies which are still purchasing Russian oil and have agreed on trade measures to cut Russian revenues. Lebanon has reported that 2 people were killed in an Israeli strike in the south of the country. Despite a ceasefire agreed in November last year, the attack marks the latest deadly incident between Lebanon and Israel since the ceasefire. Lithuania has urged citizens to build and upgrade bomb shelters amid fears of Russian drone attacks, with only 6,453 shelters, not enough to house the 2.9 million population. Local residents have started to invest to prepare basement bunkers as the government and Interior Ministry launches civil defense programs to enhance readiness. Now we look at North America. 2 planes operated by Delta's subsidiary Endeavour Air collided today at New York's LaGuardia Airport. The crash happened at 9:58 p.m. local time as one plane was landing and the other preparing to take off. One person was taken to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. A flight attendant suffered a minor injury. Photos showed damage to the nose of one jet. LaGuardia's operations continued without disruption. Delta has said that the wing of the departing plane hit the fuselage of the arriving plane during taxi. 93 passengers and crew were on board both jets. Authorities are now reviewing safety procedures. Now we move on. The finance ministers of G7 nations have released a statement saying that the group is considering joint steps to increase pressure on Russia by targeting countries that continue to increase purchases of Russian oil. The ministers have also agreed on key trade measures, including tariffs and export bans, as another step to cut off Russian revenues. The statement includes measures to significantly reduce remaining imports from Russia, including hydrocarbons that is still being imported by Europe. This comes after President Donald Trump earlier called on European countries to further reduce purchases from Russia. The move also targets countries like China and India, which have significantly increased purchases of Russian oil since the start of the war. India in particular has been hit by an additional 25% of tariffs over purchases of Indian oil by the United States. The G7 statement on restricting countries from buying Russian oil is significant development for the global oil market as well. Now for this discussion, we're joined by retired Major General G.G. Dwivedi. He's a defense analyst, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Major General, for joining us. Good to see you. Now, what are the potential implications for the G7's push to pressure countries, especially like India and China, over their oil purchases from Russia?
Well, firstly, Suma, thank you for having me on your show. Well, this decision by the G7 countries' finance ministers to bring in further sanctions on those countries which are purchasing oil from Russia definitely has a significant impact on India, because India is one of the major purchasers of oil from Russia. In fact, last year it was to the tune of about $52 billion. But the point is that we need to see this in the overall context. Firstly, the G7 finance minister's statement comes, it is in sync with President Putin's tariff war, and it is also in sync with their understanding that to cut down the revenues to Russia so that its capacity to continue the war in Ukraine is hampered. And this is the larger context that this statement should be seen. And also we need to also see that who are the major purchasers of Russian oil. But for India, India is not purchasing as much as China. In fact, China purchased about 100 million tons of oil last year. Even Europe has been importing Russian gas, in fact, to the tune of about $16 billion last year. So the point we have to understand is that we, first and foremost, no country can be coerced or forced to do its trade or purchases by a group of countries. And the second is that as India has been hit by the 50% additional tariffs, I think India also is taking into cognizance that we can diversify our purchases of oil, because today the difference between the Russian crude oil and the global crude oil is very minimal. So I am sure certain amount of understanding is being done on this scope. But the point at issue is that as far as the G7 finance minister statement is concerned, I think it comes in the overall purview of US tariff war on those countries which are purchasing oil from Russia. And as President President Trump had stated, that those countries who are buying oil from Russia are fueling the Ukraine war. So all I can say is that this statement must be taken with seriousness, and countries like India must take cognizance so that we are not hit with further tariffs. At the same time, certain negotiation must be undertaken so that there is understanding and we can also diversify our purchase of oil. But at the end of the day, I think this will definitely impact the countries who are purchasing oil from Russia, and also the Russian revenue, because the major Russian revenue is coming from a sale of oil and gas and energy. Asuma.
And Major General, is NATO's focus on penalizing countries like India and China for purchasing this Russian oil, is it distracting from its own continued reliance on Russian energy?
Definitely, because it's a double talk, because the European nations, as I said, have imported about almost $16 billion worth of gas from Russia. And secondly, the India's oil also is finding its way to Europe, because water India is refining, part of this oil is also going to European countries. In fact, initially, the Americans did not raise any observation or any dissent on this, because they found that India purchasing oil from Russia will stabilize the global prices. But now this turn of policy under Trump has come off late, and therefore I think there can't be double talk on this issue. The European nation, in case they want to impose sanctions on those countries which are purchasing oil from Russia, that I think charity must begin from home, and this must they must be the first one to cut off the purchases of oil and gas from Russia. And as I said, that standards or the principles and laws should be universally applicable. You cannot be selective in that, and therefore you should not target only selective countries. If the policies are made, then they should be across the board and not single out countries just because of either political reasons or even personal reasons. Asuma.
And Major General, how do you think India should navigate going forward, as it's very, very sensitive now?
Absolutely, because it is sensitive, because it is going to impact India's economy, because in case the sanctions are put through, it will almost be a loss of something to the tune of about $50 billion to our economy. And there are two things which are actually happening at the same time. First and foremost, India is negotiating the FTA with America, and the talks are on. Still, there is hope that this move forward will definitely take place in time to come. And at the same time, India is also considering to diversify its oil purchases and energy requirement, because if this is going to impact our larger economy, I'm sure that our planners would be looking at alternate purchases. And let me also tell you that America has interest in this. America wants to sell their own oil and own energy, so therefore they would like India to also diversify and go into their markets. But the point at issue is that India would definitely be taking a very strategic and long-term view as to how to overcome this issue. And I'm sure the policies will undergo certain degree of change so that our economy is not impacted. At the same time, we also exercise strategic autonomy, and as a sovereign nation, we have the right to buy from wherever we find as per the market forces. So I think a couple of these issues will be on the table to diversify and also to ensure that our economic interests are not hurt by this proposal of the G7 Finance Minister Conference and the decisions that have been taken thereof. Asuma.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Major General, for joining us and sharing that insight throughout. Now we move on to Asia. South Korean Foreign Minister Cho Hyun has said that South Korea and the United States have reached a rough agreement on security. This development has come amid ongoing tariff negotiations between the two countries still go on. Now, Cho Hyun has also added that the U.S. is reviewing a currency swap deal, which is a key demand from Seoul in the tariff talks, but has indicated that the progress on it remains slow. As per the latest development, Washington has agreed to lower tariffs on South Korean imports, but this comes in exchange for a $350 billion investment package. However, follow-up talks on the package's details have stalled, and Cho has noted that South Korea may require more time than Japan to finalize any trade agreement. Additionally, the two sides are discussing security measures, including an increase in South Korean defense spending as part of the broader package to reduce U.S. tariffs. Seoul hopes to announce the security agreement before the APEC summit in Gyeongju that is scheduled later this month, which U.S. President Donald Trump is also expected to attend. Meanwhile, President Trump has repeatedly urged South Korea to cover more of its military costs on its own. In response, South Korean President Lee Jae-myung has confirmed an 8.2% increase in next year's defense budget. Commenting on a possible meeting between President Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, as per some reports, Cho has not ruled it out. Earlier, President Lee has proposed that President Trump can consider talks with North Korean leader Kim during his trip to South Korea, while North Korea has indicated that it would be open to dialogue only if Washington drops its demand for complete denuclearization. Now for this discussion, we're joined by Dr. Sanjay Kumar. He's a journalist at the Korea Herald, joins us live from Seoul. Thank you very much, Dr. Sanjay, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, how do you think this slow progress compared to maybe Japan on the currency swap deal and stall talks on the $350 billion investment package will affect South Korea's relationship with the United States?
Asuma, it is already affecting the South Korea-US relations, and the recent detention incident added further to it. But if you see the slow process of South Korean perspective, it is very understandable because the Korean investors and companies, they still are not clear. They do not have clarity on how these tariffs product wise is going to be imposed and how this $350 billion is going to be used by both the parties. So the common sentiment here in South Korea is that if this $350 billion is only going to be used unilaterally from the US side, then how it is going to help the companies and how it is going to serve South Korean interests. So in that case, where is the case of negotiation? It would be a one-sided approach. So because of that, uh, the South Korean government is very cautious in its approach, and they are trying to negotiate from different angles in a very comprehensive way, and as well as the specific sides of the all the products and uh, product-wise tariff is under negotiation. And from South Korean government perspective, the amount is not small; it's a huge amount. And President Lee Jae-myung recently has reiterated also that just using that kind of amount and just if it is used in unilaterally in the way the fashion it has been demanded, then it may bring Korea into IMF crisis like situation. So that is why it is very critical for South Korea to uh, uh, review it well and then sign any agreement. And that is why it is likely that it is going to take more time and not like Japan. Yeah.
How do you think
Yes.
President Trump's repeated demands for South Korea to shoulder more military costs will influence domestic opinion in South Korea, especially in light of the proposed defense budget increase?
There is a strong backlash here, because South Korea already had been spending a lot. 28,500 US troops had been stationed here. It's not like a news story. Everybody is aware. So that is why there is a strong backlash here that why we have to shoulder more when we are already spending a huge amount in security. And then, yes, after yesterday, when it is announced that South Korea is going to invest like more 8.2% more in defense, that is like from South Korean perspective that looks enough. So anything if it is added, that would like add fuel to the fire when it comes to sentiments. And that is why it should not be forgotten that many here in Korea, especially the civil societies and the Democratic Party leaders and many people here, and especially the young generation too, they are not very supportive to expansion of defense budget. And also they do say that when it is compared to North Korea, it's already like 1.4 times of the complete of their entire GDP. I mean, the North Korea's GDP, and three axis strategic defense channels are already in place in Korea. So why to expand more? Why to spend more? And the sentiment here is that rather than just expanding and increasing the military expenses, why not we go for more self-reliable capability in defense? So this is the common sentiment here, and that is why, of course, there is a backlash against Trump when it comes to security expenses.
Right, and with this increase in defense spending and discussions around security measure, how do you think South Korea's role is in regional security, particularly concerning North Korea and China? Will it evolve under this new agreement with the US?
Well, from South Korean perspective, it is really important. And if you ask me, frankly, the East Asian regional dynamics and regional security dynamics, including the East Asia, then of course, after North Korea, Russia, and China trio, it has sent very strong signals in the entire Northeast region to have some alternative. And South Korea, Taiwan, US, these countries are, trying to come up together. Although these Japan is also there for like in trilateral cooperation, but Taiwan and recently Philippines is also voicing concerns against China. And when you see all these South China, if you mix all those geopolitical and geo security like political security, these aspects together, then it raises concerns in South Korea and many in Northeast Asia that there has to be some kind of security setup and security mechanism to deal with the growing North Korea, Russia, China, this trio. So in order to counter that, of course, because Indo-Pacific, Quad, these all security strategies have not materialized so far because of different geopolitical and geo-economic reasons. But the observers here and people here are very observant on this matter, and they don't want to give any leverage to this growing Russia, China, North Korea agreements. And the tone of China also is getting softened when it comes to denuclearization of North Korea. Russia, North Korea already have signed agreement. They are also going, hand to hand. So when you mix all these, it raises concerns in South Korea as well.
Right. And last but not least, bringing North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in this picture, how likely is that President Trump will engage in talks with leader Kim during his visit to South Korea?
See, Azuma, Trump would like to engage Kim Jong-un on a lighter mode, because the signal that has been sent from North Korea is very loud and clear that they are not ready to take part in any talks on some kind of with some conditions. So any dialogue will not be on any condition. I mean, it is well known that those conditions are UN sanctions and the denuclearization and the so-called sovereignty, they call it. That is why any kind of engagement from Trump's perspective is going to be lighter. It should be on lighter mode. But from South Korean perspective, if you bring the current government wants to somehow engage North Korea, no matter it is lighter or it is or harder mode. So they want to engage somehow. But the problem is that North Koreans are not interested to talk to South Korea. They only want US to be the counterpart. So Trump, if he shows some interest, further interest, without any further preconditions, then I'm sure Kim Jong-un would like to meet. This is how I see. But in that case, there will be a win-win for Trump and Kim both. But win-win in case of personal diplomacy, not on ground. Nothing will be achieved on ground because it will be on a precondition basis. And like what North Korea wants.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes, the denuclear. Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Sanjay, for joining us and sharing that insight from South Korea. Now we move on. The White House has rejected Pope Leo's comments about the inhuman treatment of migrants in the United States. White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt has said that she rejects the fact that there is inhuman treatment of illegal immigrants under President Trump's administration, and that the administration is trying to enforce laws in the most humane way as possible. She has further said that there was significant inhuman treatment under the previous administration of Joe Biden. This comes as Pope Leo had earlier criticized the Trump administration's immigration policies and had said that someone who is against abortion but in agreement with inhuman treatment of immigrants is not pro-life. Now for this discussion, we're joined by Dr. Satoru Nagao. He's a fellow at Hudson Institute, joins us live from Tokyo. Thank you very much, Doctor, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, looking at these statements coming in from Pope, what impact do you think Pope Leo's remarks will have on the public perception of the Trump's administration's immigration policies? especially among maybe Christian communities or MAGA supporters?
In the case of the immigration issue, the Trump administration tried to send illegal immigration back. That is true. But to reach such kind of decisions, we should not forget what happened in the history. Indeed, the real cause of the problem is, even if the illegal, the many people can stay in the United States was the starting point. So when we talk about building the wall between the United States and the Mexico border, that place is who is the first president to say to build the wall is indeed the Clinton and Obama. That age, U.S. government start to say they need to build a wall in between America and Mexico. So after that, Bush. After that, Obama, Trump, Biden, Trump. So all of these periods, the United States has talked about how to stop the illegal immigration. So that's why the cause of the program, even if the illegal, the people can stay, and so legal immigrant follows the rule, but illegal immigrant does not follow the rule because illegal. So that problem itself is has a long history. So that's why even if the current Trump administration's policy choose relatively strong policy against illegal immigrants, to reach this decision, this has a background, and which is now they need to choose this method as a final method. So that's why we should not forget this history. So that's why the Pope Leo mentioned about it. This is a little bit too strong. That is, of course, understandable, but at the same time, view from the U.S. side, of course, this is needed because look at this history. This is the decision they need to do. This is a logical decision, they believe.
And now looking at Europe, Europe has a lot of immigration and problems also relating to immigrants and immigration going on. So how can the Pope's criticism of US's immigration policies be reconciled with the Catholic Church's own struggles to address similar issues in Europe, such as the treatment of refugees as well as illegal immigrants in that region?
I guess Pope worry about U.S.-style immigration policy will spread to the Europe. Because the European countries also face immigration issue, especially Western European countries face immigration issue. And illegally, the people entering their country, and that is people the government cannot control. So this is a problem. So in this case, if the European country also choose to send them back to their country, of course, illegal means that legally this is legal, but at the same time, such kind of mood is not welcome. The Pope thinks that view from the history of the policy of the Christian Church, that is understandable. But at the same time, it is also true that how to control the immigration is a very important political issue. Without the control, the system itself will be threatened. So that's why something is needed, that is true. So something proper that people can agree must be choose, but until now, view from the history, the relatively strong measure is only measure people start to believe.
And how do you view Caroline Leavitt's comments that it was previous administration, particularly Joe Biden's administration, that was treating them bad, not the current administration?
This is, in the United States, this is a very political issue, and who support which government, which party is affected their remark. In case of the Democrats, of course, diversity is a appeal point. Accepting the immigrant is a appeal point. This is source of the power of the United States is a appeal point. So that's why the Trump administration measure to deal with them legally, that is a little bit too strong. The Biden administration side thing. And the Trump administration side criticize Biden's policy. The Biden policy is they cannot control any illegal immigration. That's why the number has increased. More people come and more people enter. This is not immigration policy. This is no policy. This is just open borders, invasion, something like that. Trump administration criticized Biden's policy. But view from the Biden policy, this is also power, not problem, they start to say. But even if the both sides, the opinion itself is a complete opposite side of this opposite side in this issue. But anyway, the both sides need to find a way to control the immigration, that illegal immigration. That is true.
Yes, indeed. And thank you very much, Dr. Satoru Nagawa, for joining us and sharing that insight throughout our news. Now, this is all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world.